So once we turn the green button on, this is your guys' AED. Now remember, we're trying our best to do every one of our initial pad placements anterior and posterior. All right, so if we do our pads anterior, posterior, the pads are actually going to come through here. So if your pediatric pad is anterior, posterior, this should automatically decrease that joules, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that those pads are designed, out of the manufacturer, they're designed to read body mass. So as long as everything's hooked up appropriately, you apply the pads appropriately, it's recognizing I have a smaller patient, I have a large patient. And it'll adjust the joulage accordingly to that size patient.
But let's say they forget. Now we're doing anterior and lateral placement, the old traditional one, or what would be our vector change nowadays. We're going to show them how to put in pediatric. So if you guys notice, the first thing you're looking at here is that your Zoll monitor is showing it's in adult mode. So with that being said, it's in adult mode. This is your AED. So Jake, if I'm in the adult mode and I put somebody on pads, how do I make this into an AED?
So if we're making it into an AED, you see the number 1, you see analyze. All you have to do is hit the analyze button.
Attach
You
pad.
have now turned this into an AED.
And if you notice, I'm at 200 joules. The AED automatically goes to 200. The anterior posterior placements will then decide what joules. So then it's as simple as this is analyzing once I turn the pads on, and then it's going to be going through 2, 3, charging it, shocking it, correct?
Correct.
But if this is a pediatric, and let's say we don't do anterior and posterior placements, how do I make this a pediatric AED?
So if we look at this and we look at the top, like David said, you see the highlight. We can negotiate and navigate this entire screen. All we got to do is hit these selector buttons. Since we're changing to a pediatric mode, we'll select adult. You'll see you have 3 options down. You have adult, pediatric, neonate. We're going to go down to pediatric, select,
Attach pad.
and it now has changed our joulage that we can give to that patient according to the patient we selected.
And once again, this, we need to make sure we're consciously putting that into pediatric mode if we're doing an anterior lateral placement. If we're doing anterior posterior, it should be fine. You still want to try your best to remember to come back and put that down. Try to always remember to put your AED into pediatric mode. So now let's say ALS walks in behind it and we're in the AED mode. How do I pull this out of AED as the paramedic?
So to pull it out of AED mode, there's a couple different ways you can do it. The easiest way, the most obvious way, if you look at that top right screen, there's an exit button. That button, that gray button, correlates to that option. Select it. You have now taken off AED. Another option, option number 2, and analyze again.
Attach pad.
If you go to energy select, this paramedic, myself as a paramedic, now has control over this monitor. I can adjust the joulage accordingly.
Perfect. Let's say that crew on scene decides the AED says, hey, analyze, I need to charge it.
Attach pad.
So they start charging it. Now what happens if that BLS crew all of a sudden says, oh man, the patient's awake, it was actually a seizure, I don't need to shake, I don't need to discharge it.
So there's a couple different ways we can disarm it, we can discharge it. One is the obvious again, if we go to these side buttons here, the gray buttons, about 3 buttons down, it says disarm, it's highlighted. Select it, we have now disarmed this monitor. The other way, if we go through energy select, charge, we're at the point where we could potentially charge if we need to. However, we need to disarm. The other way to do it, energy select up or down, it'll disarm it.
So highlight 2 things. We need to make sure that if we're going into an AED mode, we need to be pediatric or adult. To go over, all we do is highlight the arrows. Oh, I'm staying in pediatric mode. What do we do now? There we go, it's highlighted over. I push the button. Now I make it into adult or pediatric. To turn into AED, we're going to push 1 to analyze.
Attach pads.
It's going to tell you once your pads are on whether you shock or no shock. If it says shock, you push the charge and shock. If I need to dump the joules at any moment in time, I can either push the disarm button or I can go up and down. Anything else? Any other little tricks for the AED?
Not that I can think of, David.
All right.